Here is the long-awaited Frozen 2 historically inspired cosplay. If you like the content on my channel, please consider contributing or joining my Patreon account or my Ko-fi account, and the links are listed below. A shout out to Sabrina for your most generous donation to my Ko-fi account this last week. Oh my goodness, you just made my heart so warm. Thank you very much. Every penny counts for a small YouTube channel and an artist and a maker. So thank you so much. This bodice has been in the works for about 6 months. And the last hiccup was hardware, not my problems with starting and stopping and getting distracted. My sewing machine had to go to the doctor for 3 weeks, and it needed a pretty significant repair. I did have a backup machine, but it's just not the same as my Viking 118, so I waited until that was back before I finished the bodice. I do hope you enjoy this process video. Please stay tuned to the very end for the reveal photos. I'm so excited about this project. A, it's done. Yay! And B, it's my first cosplay, so naturally I think I'm just really excited about what y'all think about it. And hey there, lovelies. Onward goes the saga of the Frozen 2 natural form era cosplay dress. It's 9:30 at night. I'm not going to tell you what day. I was happily embroidering a pocket. I was doing some shooting of some embroidery stitches to share with you. And while I was working on this project, it occurred to me, because I was thinking of 3 things at the same time, that my Frozen bodice is going to need buttons. And I thought, oh, how cool would it be if I embroidered the buttons? And then it occurred to me that I actually did buy mold, like a template to make buttons, so that I could use fabric from my garment to make buttons for this garment.
I had thought ahead.
Today, I went into my stash and I double checked to make sure I had some blue taffeta, and that's the same fabric that's on the foundation skirt, so I know it'll match, it'll tie everything together. And I experimented and I made 2 buttons to test out kind of my theory as to what I want to do. The mold covers, so there's a little bit of an overlap, so the mold shows that if I embroider inside this little clear circle, that I can get that entire image on the button. Okay, now I know I'm going to have to use really thin thread, and I'm going to have to keep it pretty precise. This is acrylic taffeta. This is polyester. It's not real silk. So it's a little thicker. While I was at it, I was up in my studio. I made some buttons.
And I got really excited, so I got my taffeta out.
Now I just have to draw on my taffeta, draw the circles with Fusion pen, because it's heat. It goes away with heat. That'll give me the template, and then I can just do the embroidery with really fine stitching.
I'm so excited about this.
I don't know why. Honest to goodness, the reason I create garments is so that I have an excuse to embellish and have these wild hairs satisfied in some bizarre way. I began with the individual elemental symbols using silk thread. After I finished a few, I decided I wanted to surround the emblem with a chain stitch. Once complete, I realized the embroidery would be chunky looking on the metal button top. I cut a few pieces of scrap felt and glued them to the back of the embroidery to minimize the bumps. Once dry, I used E6000 to glue the whole assembly to the metal button tops that would be part of the button assembly. I was really worried about the thickness of the polyester taffeta, embroidery, and felt without some glue to hold it all together. I waited a few days to make sure everything was dry, and honestly kind of forgot about it for a few days. And yes, the glue was probably a little overkill, but I'm glad I did it. Using the button mold, I pressed the glued button parts into the mold. I found using the end of a pen worked great, I then arranged the shank just right, placing the blue piece and used a hammer to mash it all together. Because of the thickness of the button parts, pressing was just not going to work. More force was necessary. Here are a few completed. I also used a bit of fabric glue around the edge of each assembly and let dry a few days. They look so pretty on the bodice. The collar design actually came quite early in the design and construction process of this cosplay ensemble. I found this cute little image of Bruni, the fire element creature, right at the start of my design process. I chose some textured white fabric, some kind of synthetic blend, was a scrap at a thrift store purchase and not much of it. It's difficult to see, but it does have some silver glitter-like sheen to it. I chose a 2-part collar from a coat pattern I had on hand, arranging the embroidery on the collar lapel piece. And you'll see later, I placed them a little too high. I used some scrap polyester taffeta as an applique base to embroider on and around. I love to mix and match techniques for embellishing to add layers of texture. The fabric has its own texture, adding the taffeta and embroidery just bling it out more. I used a light board to draw the rest of the design using a pencil. The embroidery was done using split stitch, chain stitch, and satin stitch with cotton embroidery floss. The split stitch was used to outline and fill the flame areas. The satin stitch was used in the eyes, and the chain stitch was done all around the Bruni figure. The embroidery was pretty simple working around the edge, but the reason why there's no footage of the embroidery on the taffeta is, again, this is polyester. Polyester and embroidery is a monumental pain in the patootie. The polyester taffeta snags the embroidery floss, creating knots. It also shreds the fibers of the cotton floss. So much frustration, breaking of threads, and maybe a few cuss words, and putting it down frequently and walking away to cool off. As per usual, my starting place is tracing the pattern onto paper. I like to not cut my original patterns, for they may be used for a larger or smaller size. Also, I can adjust the new pattern for mock-ups and not worry about ruining my original pieces. I am using a new pattern to me, the Truly Victorian TV 420 1879 Curious Bodice. I'm also using the day wear pattern pieces. This is a close-up detail of the Vogue pattern pieces that I chose to use for the bodice. This is the collar. So the collar is from Vogue 8346, and I took the collar pattern and I read through how to assemble it and what pieces go where, so that when I get to the point of putting the collar on the bodice, I have the correct piece embroidered. And that was this piece. That was the lapel. So all the pieces are cut out of this really nice cotton texture. It's a cotton poly blend. So this is a real thing in my world. I cut this bodice pattern out and I had totally forgotten that I used the Truly Victorian 1879 Cuirass bodice and evening options. So I apparently did do a mock-up, because I have all kinds of mock-up pieces with notes on them and where the darts should go. And before I sew all of these pieces together, I am going to put my dart lines in on my front. I don't have any dart pieces anywhere else, but I apparently did make this mock-up because my side back piece definitely accounts for my rump. And I don't remember doing that, but I obviously did. So I'm gonna mark out my pieces first, and then we'll start sewing it together. When you're marking your pieces, I like to use pins to kind of hold down the extra area so that when I slide this in, it doesn't go wonky on me. And then you just trace over your line using your carbon paper and your tracing wheel. There are lots of YouTube videos about how to do this, so I am not going to do a tutorial, but it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have a really long one like this one, I do all of the top, and then because I've pinned my pattern piece, I don't have to worry about it shifting, and I can go all the way to the bottom. And voila, I have markings. Now what you can do also is, if you're a little worried about the chalk, you can go over with your friction pens to make the lines much clearer. Because that'll go away with the heat. So, and then do that on the other pattern piece, and then we'll be rocking and rolling. So here you go, here are the darts sewn. And there they are. If you look up close, I sewed directly on that pink line of the tracing that I made, and I matched it up to the other side so that it's the same. I was really careful. If you take your time, they usually line up pretty well. I'm actually not going to iron these right away. I am going to follow the directions. And the directions say with fashion fabric, sew darts, so that's what I did. And then sew backs to side backs, side backs to side seam, fronts to sides, backs together, back front. So I'm gonna sew all the sides together and then all the other sides together and then sew them up in the middle. And then it says boning, but I'm gonna try it on or put it on my dress dummy first. This next part is a conglomeration part from two patterns. So I am taking the truly Victorian 1879
cuirass pattern,
and then I'm also taking the fantail from a butterick pattern because I want to use this sheet that has this beautiful acrylic applique lace on it. But I want to treat it like the fan in the garment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, well, I'm trying to figure it out, because what I want to do is make sure that when I put this in, that the lace part lines up with the rest of the lace that'll be on the bodice. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back. This will be my fan piece. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the lace piece all along the bottom of each side of the bodice. The reason I'm not doing boning yet is because the boning needs to go all the way down into that lace area. I'm very much treating the lace like an extension of the bodice. So I want to make sure that it's, especially on these front pieces where I want to put boning in to give it that flat natural form era look, I want to make sure that the bodice boning goes all the way down through the lace pieces. So I think I'm gonna do that next. Oh, I want to put a button placket in here too. So I should probably put, oh, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So I know that I want to bone the front. I need to put a button placket in here. So I need to figure out which side the buttons go on. That's what I need to do first. Okay, so I got all the collar pieces up to the point where the instructions from the pattern it came from don't work. At least not on this piece. So I know that I want some overlap on my lapels but in my collar, but not a lot because I have this embroidery on this collar. So right now what I'm doing is I'm actually going to fold this over and fold it all in and then stitch it all the way around this piece, and that'll be its own piece that will fold over this way on the bodice. And then I'm going to put the front lapels on, and then I'm going to put the button placket on. At least that's in theory where I'm going next, because I can't put the trim on the end of the bodice until I have these pieces put together so that they make sense when I hang it and then put the boning in. Okay, so I am almost to the point where I can put the sleeves on. Now the collar comes down a lot further than I thought it was going to, and Mr. Fire-breathing salamander is a little skew, but I only had so much space to put him on the collar, and I hadn't used this pattern before, so lesson to me, don't do that again. I just have it pinned right now, and I have the fantail put in. I really like this on the back side. I like how it looks. I'm just really tickled with how it's turning out. I have to put the sleeves on. I had hoped that I have enough of this trim to put on the end of the cuffs, but I don't. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do for that. And you can hear my washer in the background, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm just gonna leave the sleeves plain or not. I might, or I might edge them in some of this fabric because I do have some of, just a little smidge of that left. Well, that's kind of where we're at. And I've been working on this for 8 hours now today. I'm gonna put the sleeves together. I'm gonna pin them in. I don't know if I'm gonna sew them in yet because I'm kind of tired and I'm not entirely certain if I should continue working on this when I'm tired.
I ended up cutting down some of the scrap pleated trim from the underskirt and with a little bit of the braided trim, tying it all together on the sleeves.
I'm in the final stretch. We can see we have hope at the end of the tunnel, finally. Finishing off this bodice is a couple things. So I'm gonna put buttons down the front that I handmade. And as you can see, my corset cover shows. I thought about making a chemise set. I really honestly did. I'm kind of in the place where I just want to get this done so that I can get photos taken. I have this much left of this lace. It goes all the way around the bottom of the bodice. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, once I get the buttons on, I'm going to attach this on the inside on one side and then hooks and bars probably on the other side, maybe even snaps. It kind of depends on my mood. And that will be the décolletage cover-up of the corset cover as well as my bustices, right? So once that's in and all the buttons are on, it's pretty much done. I still have boning to put in, but I'm in a conundrum with the boning. On all my other bodices, I used zip ties for the boning, and I have decided that I want to order some synthetic whalebone from Burnley and Trowbridge. So I'm going to be doing that. So I don't have the boning that I want to put in this bodice. And once the boning goes in, I'm going to put a waist tape in. It doesn't have a waist tape right now. It's just sewn together. There's no boning. And I think it's going to look okay for the photographs. I may go back and put boning in it. I may not. I don't know. But I'm going to order boning anyway for some other projects. I may just call this project done because I'm kind of over it. I've been working on it since July or August of 2020. I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. I really want to get some really pretty pictures taken of it, but I kind of also want it to be done. I want to do something else. Tonight is the home stretch. I'm going to put buttonholes on here, and I'm going to attach that lace piece, I think. And then in theory, it's going to be done and I can get photos done this week. I'm hoping. Wish me luck. Just a little bit of assessment. I love how the buttons turned out. Buttons are amazing. I also really love how the pleated cuffs turned out. They are literally the exact same pleating as the bottom, just cut down to 1.5 inches. The lace at the bottom of the bodice is just divine, matched with the placket at the top. I love, love, love the texture difference between the lace and this fabric. This fabric is so hard to see, but there's actually like a little bit, there's a little bit of sheen to it, and it's almost impossible to pick up on film, but it is there. And can you believe it, guys? This is a set of sheets. This is a set of queen-sized sheets. This sheet that has the lace on it came from a twin sheet. Again, free. Everything came from Stash except the resin. So everything is stuff that I had. I'm loving how the overskirt with all the beautiful jewels looks, and I really just can't wait for the photo shoot. So I'm really excited.